And this evening, it really is a privilege to have Dr. Craig with us. Dr. Craig is a long-time supporter of the vegan nutrition course. In fact, he has been a mentor to Davina over the years, and especially he has been there since the very beginning of the vegan nutrition course, guiding her along as he put the program together. So we're really delighted to have Dr. Craig back with us this evening. A little bit about Dr. Craig. His wealth of experience goes well beyond this program. Dr. Craig is a professor of nutrition and a director of the dietetics internship program at Andrews University in Berry Springs, Michigan. Here he has taught health and nutrition classes since 1987. Dr. Craig received his PhD degree in organic chemistry from the University of Queensland in Berry Springs, Australia. He also has a master's of public health in nutrition, which he obtained from Loma Linda University in California. In addition to all of this, he's a registered dietitian, and he holds membership in the American College of Nutrition and the American Society of Nutritional Science. Before going on to Andrews University, he was a faculty member at Loma Linda University in California and at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. He has authored over 20 articles, in scholarly journals and over 225 nutrition articles for health publication. He is a regular contributor to the Vibrant Life magazine, and he has written 7 chapters for various nutrition books. The books he has authored include Nutrition and Wellness, A Vegetarian Way to Better Health, which is a textbook that we recommend on this course. And he also encourages individuals in eating for good health, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, herbs for your health. And in 2009, he was the co-author on the ADA positive paper on vegetarian diets. So we have a wealth of knowledge in Dr. Craig this evening, and we're so privileged that he has taken the time to share with us. And I do hope that this will be a great start to your journey on this vegan nutrition training course. So Dr. Craig, I'll hand over to you so that you will have all the time that you need to make your presentation this evening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for the introduction. That's a bit scary. I hope that I can measure up to the standard that you've set there. It's always nice to connect back with the United Kingdom. We spent 4 lovely summers at Newbold, where I met Davina. She was our chef par excellence, and we've maintained contact. I'm now actually updating the introduction. I'm now retired, living in the northwest of the United States, and hold appointment with Loma Linda University. I travel down there each winter to lecture there and enjoy sunshine rather than shoveling snow here in the northwest. So let's get on with the show. Why choose a vegan lifestyle was what Davina asked me to do, and I said, well, why not? So let's take a look at okay, for some reason I'm not getting.
Yeah, Loyal, you need to unhost me. You put me on co-host. I think it should be Winston Craig, Dr. Craig.
I'm not getting advancement of my slides. For some reason why we're.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do try again, Dr. Craig. Should be fine now.
Okay, thank you. So this is just a quick outline of what we're going to do in the next 30, 40 minutes. We're going to talk about a very big issue, and that is climate change and what eating has to do with sustainability. And people today are talking very much about choosing a diet which embraces friendship with our planet. Then we're going to talk about comparing health benefits between different types of diets, the impact it has on our life, and we're going to look at the comparison between a vegan and lacto-ovo vegetarian food choices, and then a little bit about some nutrients that we particularly need to look out for. Human physiology, of course, eating meat and eating a plant-based rich diet, there's a difference in the colon. The colon is long and requires time for absorption of nutrients. And if you look at the human digestive tract, it is designed and well suited for plant consumption rather than liquids and pills and animal rich, nutrient dense animal food. And then lastly, are all vegan diets healthy? Well, let's start with that. Vegan doesn't necessarily mean healthy, does it? Well, let's take a look. Are these vegan foods healthy? Fruit Loops, donuts, a white roll with jam, potato chips, apple turnover, chocolate chip cookie, a multivitamin pill, coconut milk, Sprite or 7-Up, fried white rice. Okay, now any one of those is not harmful, can be eaten, but if your diet consists largely of those things, and of course they're all vegan, it's not a very healthy mixture. So clearly there are different types of vegan diets, and we want to choose those which are the best. And starting with Ministry of Healing, we read, in order to know what are the best foods, we should study God's original plan. He created men and women and understands their needs. He gave us the instruction manual, the owner's manual. Okay, and what did he give us? We have it spread out before us. In Genesis 1:29, I have given you every herb, or the word, the Hebrew word means plant of the field that yields seed, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. So clearly we were given grains and fruits and nuts and vegetables to consume. No mention of animal products, no death at this point. Reading again from page 296, grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods prepared in as simple and a natural a manner as possible. And in another place, she says, free of all kinds of grease and spices. And of course, the spices that she was referring to was not turmeric and garlic, but she was referring to the intensely strong condiments that they use to flavor their foods. These foods impart a strength and a power of endurance and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex, stimulating diet. So there we have it. Grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables was what God gave us in the beginning. And then again, from Ministry of Healing, as disease in animals increases, the use of milk and eggs will become more and more unsafe. An effort should be made to supply their place with other things that are healthful and inexpensive. Right now, there is a massive flu endemic going through the chicken population, and the price of eggs have tripled. They tell me, I don't know, I don't shop for eggs, but that's what the news tells us. So is disease in animals a problem? Well, I would say yes, it is. That's just a little window on many, many issues that could be addressed. So let's take a look at what the science says. We've looked at scripture on Ellen White. Let's take a look at the science. This is taken from an article that we wrote for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the headquarters in Chicago for the parent organization for dietitians, nutritionists. We penned this, and it was peer reviewed and passed through many committees. An appropriately planned vegetarian diet, including vegan diets. You'll notice the 5 bullets here. They are healthful, nutritionally adequate, provide benefits to prevent and treat certain diseases, are useful for all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy and childhood, and they're appropriate for athletes. So the Academy gives its stamp of approval that vegan diets are good, nutritious, health promoting, good for everybody. Okay, and in the summary, in the 2016 paper we wrote for the Academy, we outlined these points. Vegetarian diet is associated with lower cholesterol levels, lower heart disease mortality, lower blood pressure and hypertension, lower rates of diabetes, lower body weight, body mass index or total body weight, and lower cancer rates, not all cancer, but some cancers. So this sounds like a win-win situation. Major chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, are all, you might say, suppressed, or the risk is diminished by eating a vegetarian diet. Some of the benefits of a vegetarian diet are there less in saturated fat and cholesterol, and especially vegan diets. Higher intake of fruits and vegetables, whole grains and nuts, with its great variety of minerals and vitamins. We've listed some of them: potassium, magnesium, vitamin C, folic acid, vitamin E and K, and another lecture or two could be given about the value of all of these nutrients that are in plant foods. Vegetarians tend to eat more soy, which is rich in isoflavones that also promote health and protect us from diseases. The plant foods are loaded with fiber if they are eaten in their natural state or near natural state. So the grains we want to eat, whole grains, and the other plant foods are also rich. And then, of course, thousands of phytochemicals, the colors and the flavoring agents in our food, carotenoids and indoles and isoflavones and many other pigments in berries and vegetables and fruits, mangoes and squash and oranges, and the skins of apples and peaches and so on. These are rich. You don't get any of these things in animal foods. They're found only in plant foods. So clearly, the more plants we eat, the greater selection or abundance of these. So the question that often comes down to the wire is, okay, but is there a difference between just the regular, ordinary, run-of-the-mill lacto-ovo vegetarian diet that includes milk and eggs, and the vegan diet? The word vegan, of course, has been around for about 80 years, but it's only the last 10 years or so that it's become in vogue. It's kind of Hollywood endorsed and celebrity favored, and everybody's talking. The millennials are excited about eating plant foods because it's good for the planet, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's take a look at the next two pictures. What are the advantages of a lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet over a vegan diet, and then the reverse? Okay, so lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet is less restrictive. There's more food choices because you don't have to eliminate dishes with dairy or egg. Make a difference if you go to a restaurant, perhaps. And there's less likelihood of nutritional deficiencies. It tends to be more abundant in calcium and vitamin D and B12. And we'll talk about those elements a little bit later. And the first bullet says that a lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet may be able to provide a better child growth or growth for children because the diet is more calorie dense. That doesn't mean that you can't have those benefits on a vegan diet. It just means you have to know the foods to select and make sure that enough calories are secured, because when you're eating a lot of plant foods that are rich in fiber, this tends to be lower in calories. Okay, now the other way around, what are the advantages of a vegan diet over lacto-ovo? Well, there's less allergies because milk and eggs can be serious sources of causing allergy. Okay, there's no worry about lactose intolerance. So certain ethnic groups are at greater exposure to this. Less saturated fat and cholesterol. Of course, there's no cholesterol in plant food, so that would be a zero cholesterol diet. The animal foods, of course, are higher in saturated fat. There are a few exceptions to that, and these are the tropical oils like palm kernel oil and coconut. These are saturated fat. Less concern about listeria, salmonella, and other pathogenic bacteria, which I wouldn't say are common, but they're not uncommon in milk and eggs. And then you have a lower rate of chronic diseases. We'll see the data for this, but those that list that I showed you before of a vegetarian diet, the protection is greatest and the mortality is less when you're following an all plant diet. So there you have it, the pros and the cons. Clearly the vegan diet stands out as more protective, and if foods are carefully selected, it can be adequate and nutritious. So a vegan diet, as we have been describing, means no meat, no fish, no egg, no dairy. And why people choose this? Well, health reasons, allergies, or just a dislike. Some of us, don't like the smell of eggs or cheese. It's, it's personal preference, whatever. People want to consume a diet that supports a more compassionate approach to the treatment of animals and a planet-friendly food supply. And there are some people who just want to avoid all animal products altogether. And the benefits of a vegetarian diet are greater when all animal foods are removed from the diet. And we're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes looking at those things. Dr. Sabate at Loma Linda University published back in 2014 an analysis of various studies in the Adventist health studies publications. And after comparing the various results, this was the conclusion that he came to. Compared the lacto-ovo-vegetarian diets, vegan diets seem to offer additional protection against obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular mortality. That, to me, sounds like good news for men and women. And cancer isn't mentioned there because the benefits of cancer are a little bit more weaker. The correlations are not so strong, but we'll take a look at all the data. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are new trends over the last decade or so, and people are increasingly getting concerned about the Western ways of farming animals. Factory farming, as it's called, is it really ethical, the way animals are constrained in cages and almost forced fed, and parts of their body are removed so that they don't hurt and damage one another? And it's a whole area that we could talk about, but we'll move on. Also, the carbon footprint. And today, I don't think a day goes by that there isn't discussion about climate change. And one way that we can achieve this is not only weaning ourselves off coal and oil and gas and using solar and wind and other forms of renewable energy, but it's also how we eat, the foods we choose. We'll see that, what a difference it makes. So let's take a look at that, because this is a current hot and big topic and is especially of interest to young people. And my hat is off to them, because we in the older generation have been careless about our use of Earth's resources. So eating a vegetarian diet is not only a healthy dietary pattern, but it's also the most sustainable, compassionate, the least expensive, and the least demanding of the environment, and expends less of the Earth's resource. Now, that sounds very nice and philosophical, but let's get down to the real nitty-gritty. This is a picture that's from the journal Climate Change, back from 2014. And you can see on the right-hand side, the colored columns give you an idea of carbon dioxide equivalents per person per day. That doesn't mean so much, but over on the right-hand side, I've calculated, you can see there, the reduction in greenhouse gases. And you'll notice that going from a high meat to a medium meat to a low meat, there is a reduction in greenhouse gases, because meat, red meat, beef is the worst production of greenhouse gases. So as meat consumption diminishes, there's improvement. Then going to fish, going to vegetarian is even better. And you can see the vegan is at the top of the pile, meaning that it is producing the least. You can see 60% reduction in greenhouse gases. A lot of people over the world changing to a vegetarian diet, and particularly a vegan diet, would make a great savings towards protecting this climate. Now, another publication, these columns contain foods, and it shows you the low greenhouse gas emitters in their production, the medium and the high. And you can see in the low, it's all plant foods. In the high, it's all animal foods. In the medium, you get a mixture. There's some plants and some of the animal foods. It's clear from doing the calculations that animal foods are by far the biggest polluters of the atmosphere and changing the climate. And you'll notice at the bottom some of the research that Loma Linda has done, substituting beef with beans as a protein source would significantly reduce the environmental footprint worldwide. This is an interesting paper. Those of us who like to think about what kinds of plant-based non-dairy beverages, you can see on the left in the red are emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. In the middle, the golden honey color is land usage. And then on the right, the blue is water usage. And you can see that dairy milk is by far the worst in all categories. And the plant-based beverages don't require much land compared to dairy. Their emission for their production is like a third to a quarter. And the water depends. Soy and oat milk are by far the best. Rice is kind of thirsty, and almonds are water guzzlers. So they don't come out looking quite so good there. But the point overall is that whatever plant-based beverage you choose, it's going to be a long way ahead of dairy in terms of the environmental impact. And these numbers here are all based on 200 mils of juice. Okay, now plant-based diet produces a lot less methane, and methane is far more damaging than carbon dioxide, which is what everybody kind of talks about, emissions from cars and so forth. But methane is more damaging in terms of being a greenhouse gas. And when cows pass gas, either they burp one end or pass gas the other end, the gas is very heavy in methane because of their stomach situation, the fermentation of the grass that they eat. And you'll see here the methane produced by cattle has the same impact on global warming as the carbon dioxide released from 33 million cars. We couldn't picture them all, but there's a few hundred there in the picture. Worldwide beef production associated with 2.9 gigatons. Now, giga is 1,000 trillion. So we're seeing there's a huge amount. 14% of them come from livestock. Now, this was a study done in California comparing an omnivore diet with a vegetarian diet, and you'll notice that when you're eating meat, the food that's on the table represents significantly greater amounts of fertilizer, which comes from oil originally, more water, more energy, and more pesticides. So eating animal foods in general requires more of all of the Earth's resources. And in cases like fertilizers and pesticides, they can be polluting. And in terms of the energy, of course, the burning of the fuel will also pollute. Okay, so that's enough for the environment. Now let's switch tunes and quickly run through 5 or 6 pictures here about health. Here you see non-vegetarian, lacto and vegan, and this is percentages of population. This is Dr. Fraser's work from the Adventist Health Study cohort number 2, which they are currently deep in researching. You'll notice that vegans only have about a third of high cholesterol risk compared to the non-vegetarian, and about a half the risk for a lacto-ovo vegetarian. Now, it's not just initial studies were on white people in California, but they subsequently broadened that to people of color, and Hispanics, African Americans also show the same thing. This is a Brazilian study, I believe, yes. And this shows you, this is in the metric system. I assume you're familiar with that, even though some in the British situation and in Caribbean and Australia, when we grew up with the old system, we still kind of think a little bit in it. So under cholesterol, I've put both the metric and the older system for you if you're more comfortable one way or the other. So you can see as you go from left to right, from omnivore to lacto-ovo to vegan, the numbers go downhill in all cases except the last line, which is a good indicator. You want this to be high. This is your ratio of HDL to your total cholesterol, which some suggest from the Framingham study is the best predictor of risk of heart disease. So you can see the blood lipids for the vegans is lowest in all cases, and in the best predictor, it's the highest, which is what you want. And at the very top of the list, the body mass index, again, you see the numbers run downhill. So the vegans are looking good in all cases. Now, Dr. Esselstyn in the famous Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, he fed for 2.5 years people with a plant-based diet, no animal foods at all. Their angiogram before, and this is not all of them, this is one of the patients, this is published back in 2001 in Preventive Cardiology. This shows the angiogram, the severe narrowing of the coronary artery before the 2.5 years of a plant-based diet, no medication. And then the angiogram was repeated, and you can see it's all opened up, reversed, it's cleared. And so plant-based diets not only protect, but they can reverse. And you can see the cholesterol changes down at the bottom before and after. The numbers, the cholesterol went from 4 to 2.3, very dramatic. So yes, plant-based diets are good. What about blood pressure? Well, same picture. Now we all know that people of color African Americans tend to have more issues with blood pressure. So I've separated our black and white, and you can see that their numbers tend to be a little higher. But the point that we're making here is that vegans are at the bottom of all the groups. Vegans have the lowest blood pressure and therefore the lowest risk of hypertension. Body weight, same thing. Looking at the Adventist Health Study, these are the numbers that will summarize. Not true of everybody. You get overweight vegans. I believe it. I've seen them. You can get skinny lacto over it, but you look at the big population numbers and average them all out, then vegans tend to be about 7 kilos lighter than lacto over, and 14 kilo lighter than people who are omnivores. Oh, that's going backwards here. Okay, now cancer. This is a study from South America, from Uruguay, and you can see the study here, Di Stefani and others that were published 10 years ago. The risk of colorectal cancer, 1.63 for those on a meat-based diet and 0.6 for those on a plant-based diet. You get similar not the same numbers, but you get similar increased risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer in meat eating. And we have a whole range of slides we could show you on that, but time doesn't allow us. On a plant-based diet, the risk is lower. So this is what you see. Meat-based diet, increased risk. Eating plants, and the more plants you eat, the more protection you get because of all those good phytochemicals that are there. Now, diabetes, same thing. You see the risk goes downhill. The risk is lowest for the vegans that are eating a plant-based diet. So with all of this protection, surely vegans live longer because their risk of dying from all those major chronic diseases, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, heart attack, etc., stroke, you'd expect they live longer. And that is in actual fact what the Adventist Health Study from Loma Linda University shows, that vegans live longer. And some of you will be familiar, I'm sure Davina has or will be mentioning about the Blue Zone, which Dan Buettner wrote up in National Geographic, and he has a website, and Adventist Health has now purchased the Blue Zone from him, and they are now operating in various centers around the United States. And the original work that Dan did showed that beans, whole grains, and garden vegetables are the cornerstone of all longevity diets. Okay, that's in his book, taken right out of the book. This is what the people, what are the blue zones? For those of you who don't know, these are areas of the world that have a greater number of centenarians than you would expect on average. So Sardinia in Italy, and Icaria in Greece, and Okinawa and the Loma Linda group, which we could expand to include everybody in the Adventist lifestyle who follows the vegetarian dietary, enjoy longevity. Now, just very quickly as we come to the end, I'm going to show you that it's not only the vegan diet as a whole that is protective against the chronic diseases, and we're just going to look at three here: cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. It's not just the total package, but there's tons of papers, just research is just out there, just crawling, waiting to be read, interested people, that the different food groups, and I've combined fruits and vegetables, legumes, including soy, but not only soy, there's all the legumes, pinto beans, chickpeas, the whole works, whole grains, nuts and seeds, we combine those, and spices. Okay, all of these food groups, because spices are not really a food group, but they're an adjunct that makes food more enjoyable and is just loaded with phytochemicals. And if you look in the literature, a check mark means that that food group on the left provides protection against that chronic disease in the three columns to the right of it. And there's nothing blank. Everything has a check mark. So what does that mean? Every food group is protective. So obviously it's a no-brainer. You put all those foods together and clearly you get a wonderful package of protection. I'm just going to, I could give you 30, 40 different examples, but I'm just going to select one from each of the food groups to show you how you get protection. Green leafy vegetables and the berries, like blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. I just came from breakfast, I had a plate of raspberries, just truly delicious. These anthocyanin-rich berries are protective against diabetes. The green leafy vegetables are protective against diabetes. Not all the vegetables, not all the fruit, but the green leafy vegetables and the berries have been shown to be protective against diabetes. What about whole grains? Well, the big study in Boston, looking at like 75,000 nurses, tracking them, looking at their eating habits, found that those who ate whole grains rather than white bread, white rice, white sugar, okay, they had lower coronary heart disease, lower stroke, lower diabetes. And you can see the numbers are not trivial. These are, you know, around 30, 40%. Grains are rich in fiber and in polyphenolics, which are particularly ferulic acid, which are particularly protective. And of course, when you mill the grain, you get rid of most of the fiber. 90% of the fiber is gone in white bread, and 75 to 80% of the phytochemicals are lost when you refine the flour. So whole grains are the way to go. What about nuts? Okay, this just shows you different studies. The different colors represent the different studies, but you're going from left to right of no nuts versus almost eating a serving one per day. And you can see the pictures all go downhill, and downhill means lower risk. Risk of what? Death from coronary heart disease. So those who eat more nuts are protected from a heart attack, from heart disease. So, you know, how much nuts? Well, a handful. 15, 20, 30 grams a day, whatever you want to take, and you will be protected. Okay, what about beans? We've talked about vegetables, nuts, grains. What about beans? Well, you can see in this National Health and Nutrition Evaluation Survey of almost 10,000 people, they found that eating beans, and we're not talking about soybeans here, we're talking about many different peas and beans and lentils. Those who eat at least 4 times a week, almost their coronary heart disease risk drops almost 25% compared to those who didn't eat beans hardly at all. In another study looking at black beans, 1/3 of a cup of cooked black beans a day, almost 40% reduction in a heart attack compared to those. So beans do the trick. Fruit also protects against cancer, heart disease. Okay, so all the food groups, but then of course the spices, garlic, onions, ginger, turmeric, these contain phytonutrients or phytochemicals, and they provide significant protection against cancer of the gut and against cardiovascular disease. Lots of research documenting these 4 spices that are pictured there for you. These are definitely to be added in your cooking, your vegetables or fruits. You know, you can add ginger to your watermelon or fruit salad. It creates a nice flavor. I don't know about putting garlic in your fruits, but you know, in different dishes you can use these spices. Okay, now in conclusion, we just want to mention that there are a few elements in a vegan diet that may be of concern: B12, the omega-3 fatty acids, the long ones, the shorter ones we get, calcium and vitamin D. And we don't want to spend too much time on this, but the B12 and the calcium we will mention because these are more important or are more likely to occur. Vitamin D we can get from sunshine. If we can get through the fog and the rain and the snow, definitely during the summer months we get enough vitamin D. So let's just take a quick look. Vitamin D, you can see the vegan at the bottom have the lowest numbers for intake. They're marginal, and so one needs to be careful to get enough B12. And it's important because it affects the brain. And in today's world of misinformation and disinformation and confusion, we need our brains running on 100% premium fuel. And mental concentration, memory loss, disorientation, these things are connected with B12 deficiency. And there are foods that are fortified, certain cereals, certain beverages, certain vegetarian meats. We don't have to eat all of these, but if you're drinking soya milk, read the label to make sure it has B12 added to it. And if you don't use any of those things, then it's advisable to take a supplement regularly, and it needs to be chewed or use a sublingual variety, because if you just swallow it, it won't be absorbed. So people of age should eat fortified foods, and all vegans should use B12 fortified foods or have a regular supplement, because plant foods have none. We need some, only 2.5 micrograms a day. It's only a small amount, but it can make a big difference over time in terms of mental acuity. We're told in the ninth volume of the testimonies that some in abstaining from milk and eggs have failed to supply the system with proper nourishment, and as a consequence have become weak and unable to work. So health reform is brought into disrepute. So yeah, we have to recognize that milk and eggs do have B12, and if you don't use them, then you've got to get it from somewhere else. Calcium, again, the vegans, because they tend to be not milk drinkers, are on the lower end. If they're using plant-based beverage that's calcium fortified, probably not an issue. But studies show that vegans do have a greater incidence of fractures. This British study shows 30% greater fracture rate. But if they excluded those with a low calcium intake and looked only at those with meeting the estimated average requirement in the United Kingdom, then the numbers on the right-hand side there show there's no significant difference in fracture rates. So in other words, the higher fracture rate appeared to be a consequence of the low calcium intake. So to make sure we get better health on a vegan diet, eat plenty of vegetables, because vitamin K in the vegetables helps bone integrity, because it helps with the creation, the synthesis of a very important protein in the bone called osteocalcin that binds the calcium for bone. Fruits and vegetables are rich in magnesium and potassium, and that makes for an alkaline residue, which helps with maintaining bone density. Soy is rich in isoflavones, and these have been shown to help with calcium retention. And then use your basil, your rosemary, your sage, your dill, all those different herbal seasonings instead of pouring on the salt, because salt is too much salt is connected with losing calcium in your urine, which is the major loss pathway in the body. So if we cut down on salt, we're not going to lose so much calcium. So these are some things that we can do as vegans to maintain good bones. Get your calcium, but also eat lots of fruits and vegetables. Use soy and use your different herbs. And then just a word about omega-3. You can see that the seeds, chia and flax are at the top of the list in terms of the number of grams. These numbers here are all grams per the serving given. Soy has some omega-3, certainly nothing to the same level as chia and flax and walnut. And then for those who want to get it more quickly, the oils at the bottom there, the chia seed oil, just a teaspoon gives you nearly 3 grams, and you only need about 1 gram a day. So the use of these foods can give you the omega-3. So in conclusion, a properly planned vegan diet is good, nutritionally adequate, and of course it's health promoting. Fortified foods and or supplements may be needed for certain nutrients. Vegans, number 2, have lower body weight, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, high blood pressure than other dietary groups, and also less cancer in some areas. Vegan diets are more sustainable, they're more planet friendly, and we say thumbs up for that. It's a bonus. Bone mineral density and risk of fractures can be a problem for vegans if the calcium and vitamin D intake is inadequate. So if you're concerned, you look for plant foods that have the calcium and vitamin D fortification, which is generally what soy milk has. Read the label to make sure the brand. We did research on European and UK beverages. We published it last March of last year, and we found, the 50% or so, 40–50% of the beverages don't have fortification, adequate fortification. So the important thing is read the label. So vegans may have to use fortification, or if they're not, then regular supplement would be desirable. And vegan diets, whole foods, plant-based, are more like the original diet that God gave us in the beginning. And in conclusion, I just want to give you a text from Romans 14. The kingdom of God is not a matter of eating and drinking, but of righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit. Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and mutual edification. don't destroy the work of God for the sake of food. I put this in at the end because there are some, not in the UK, but somewhere else, maybe close to where I'm sitting here, that would make diet as kind of a ladder of righteousness. And Paul is telling us, let's not allow differences over food to destroy God's work. Remember, we're not saved by fork and knife. And last time I checked 2 Peter 1, 5-8, a vegan diet was not part of the Christian ladder of righteousness. So let's not make diet a pious or righteous attribute. It's something we do to honor God. It's something we do for our own health, for the health of the planet, to enjoy a greater state of mind, etc. So thank you for your attention, and I'll stop sharing. If I leave this on, a lot of you will get too hungry and rush to the kitchen. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Craig. Thank you so much. I hope that everyone was taking notes, because there was a lot of good information shared there, and certainly a lot of encouragement for the journey that you're on. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to find out if there are any questions that you would like to ask Dr. Craig.
Yes, I wanted to find out why vitamins was on the bad list.
Vitamins. I hope that everyone was taking notes, because there was a lot of good information shared there, and certainly a lot of encouragement for the journey that you're on. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to find out if there are any questions that you would like to ask Dr. Craig.
Yes, the question was, yes, I wanted to find out why vitamins was on the bad list.
What's on the bad list?
I believe Shirley said, why are vitamins on the bad list?
I'm not sure what the question
What
means.
bad list? What bad list are you referring to?
It's, I want to believe that she's talking about supplements. Is that what you're referring to, Shirley?
Okay, I'm not sure where you're going, but I did say that vitamin B12 is not secured from plants that grow out of the ground. But if they are processed, they can be fortified with B12, and so you can still eat a vegan diet and get the
yes.
So there's nothing bad about a vitamin. It's just a vegan diet may not have enough. And of course, all of C and E and thiamine and all the others, that's fine. That's loaded with those. But B12 is missing. And of course, people would say, but God gave us plants in the beginning. But the way I look at myself now, I'm not Adam. I don't have Adam's perfection either. Height, stature, his gut is different to mine. He had the tree of life, I don't. So there's a lot of changes from the Garden of Eden. And so I don't want to presume that I know more than God and say, well, you gave me food in the garden from the beginning, therefore that's all I'm going to eat. I mean, science, we have to listen to science, and science tells us that the vegan diet is great, but B12 is something that's not there. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Craig. One other question. How about things like Corella and Spirulina that are algae? Those are alleged to have B12 and sea moss, stuff like that. I mean, what does science say about that?
Yeah, the seaweeds, sea vegetables don't have any significant source of B12. They may have minute amounts, but for the usual serving size that people get, we're looking at numbers less than 10% of what you need. So there is one seaweed, and I just can't think of the name, that has more than the others, but spirulina I know is definitely, do not rely on sea moss or spirulina for B12. That's, you know.
What about kelp, nori, dulse?
Nori, you know, I'll have to look up the one seaweed that
Okay.
that has some B12, but most of them, the answer is no.
Okay. How about our B12 that is produced in our mouth and our gut overnight?
Okay, when I was teaching at Loma Linda, one of my colleagues, Dr. Blankenship, he scraped teeth every day and analyzed the B12 produced by the microorganisms in the mouth. And over 30 days, the amount of B12 produced was only a mere fraction of what is needed. So if you want to leave your teeth dirty for 30 days and then scrape off, collect the B12, that would maybe contribute 5 or 10% of your daily requirement.
Oh, wow.
It
Okay.
clearly it's not anything sufficient.
How about I know what you have said already about the plants, but there are just still a couple of other plants that I just want to flag up because they're normally said to have some source of B12, like parsley and parsley. I can't remember the other one at the moment, but definitely parsley, maybe cilantro. What?
Well, if these are, you know, this is very crude, but if these are grown in chicken manure or in some animal fertilizer, and these are not properly washed, yes, they'll have B12. But if they are grown in different situations and, you know, effectively washed, they won't have. I mean, sprouts can also have some because they can be contaminated with animal manure or something. But anything that's hygienic and is plant-based just doesn't have B12. Now, some of the products in health food stores claim this, and this is based upon an old technology which uses microorganisms to measure the level of B12. And it doesn't distinguish between the active B12 and all the cousins. And cousins are inactive. But the new technique, which is called radioimmunoassay, which is used, measures specifically for the active B12. So if some products in health food stores claim that it has such and such a level of B12, it's probably based on this older technology, which is still legal to use, even though it's inaccurate.
Okay. Wow, interesting. All right, so Dr. Craig, if I should live in the country where I plant and grow my own food, how should I try and get my B12?
How should what?
If I live in the country where I plant and grow my own food, and then I can't rely on my food for a source of B12, any ideas how we can get our B12s?
Yeah,
if somebody's like off the grid.
Listening to me, you're on the internet, so all kinds of things are available now. You can buy anything and everything. You can almost buy your house on the internet. It's yeah, so there are foods and supplements whatever, you can get them shipped to you in the country by ordering online. Or drive into the city once a month or twice a year or whatever and buy certain things that will assist you in your food preparation.
Okay, all right.
There is a yeast that has B12 added to it, but that's again fortification. It's only one yeast out of many that's available. You would have to know whether it's available in the Caribbean or in the UK.
Nutritional yeast flakes?
What's that?
Nutritional yeast flakes?
Yeah.
Yes, it is available. It is.
Again, read the label just to verify that wherever you live, they're not using a generic brand that is sourced differently. These things are happening. Food supply lines are disrupted because of COVID and because of the ugly Ukraine war. The world's food system is very much disrupted as it was with COVID, and there are people springing up selling things and making things available that are not traditionally been seen, and we need to be careful that if we are relying on something particularly like B12 fortification, that we do read labels and buy safe, well-known brands, etc.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. We've had a hand raised for quite some time, and I feel if we can just indulge her. Beverly, you've had your hand raised. You can have the last question.
Yes, good afternoon, Dr. Craig. It's been about 17 years that I have stopped eating animal flesh. However, I do consume from time to time its byproducts. And I have been wanting to go total, vegan for some time now. Would I need to go and get a blood test, a blood work done to know where my my numbers are when it concerns my B's and different things? And if it is, I've been getting sufficient nutrients, number one, before I go total vegan. And also, what I also need to know is when I do go total vegan, since I would be growing my own products, my own foods, vegetables, or getting it from the market without a label on it, how would I know to maintain the necessary nutrients that I would be getting? How would I know what to give my body? Is there any other way other than going and continually doing a blood test or something, so to know my levels or my numbers? Is there any way that I can know it without having to spend a lot of money to go and find out?
Very good question. Well, if you're eating whole foods, you're doing a great step to begin with there. Sometimes it's what we do in the kitchen that is more destructive than what the food processors do. If we overcook, overheat, whatever, or fry things at high temperatures, this will cause some destructions and changes in our food. But if we are eating the foods from the garden or the marketplace with little processing or working on them in the kitchen, and making sure that all your grains are whole grains and your nuts are not blanched, because it's that little skin around it that contains most of the phytochemicals. And the fruits, you eat the skin, wash them well, but eat the skin because the skin is very rich in phytochemicals. if you've been eating animal foods, your B12 stores in the liver. B12 is one of the rare vitamins and that the body does store in the liver, and your supply may last for a few years, even if you didn't take any B12 in. We don't know unless you do a test as to what your blood level is. I wouldn't be too concerned about it right now, but as you switch to a vegan diet, you may like at your annual physical, you might like to ask the doctor to do B12. You don't need to do all the B vitamins. Your vegetarian diet, vegan diet is well supplied with folate and pyridoxine and thiamine and riboflavin, etc. It's only the B12. So, you know, if you are 50 and above, then it's important for you to have B12 checked, whether you're a vegetarian or not, because B12 requires digestion. And if your gastric juices are not working optimally, which is the case when you go over 50, your digestion isn't as good as it is when you're 20. And so it's recommended that people over 50 take B12 fortified foods or supplements, because the B12 doesn't need to be digested, but in milk and eggs and meat, it comes attached to the protein and has to be digested. And if you don't have proper digestion, you don't get adequate B12 absorption. And they say that up to 30% of people in elderly daycare centers or living better centers, whatever you call them in the UK, have mental decline because of B12 deficiency. So it isn't just being a vegan, it's the body wears out as we get older. And we aren't Adam and Eve, let's face it. And so my point is, I wouldn't be too concerned about all this blood testing initially, but after you've been on the vegan diet for a year or two, I would, at my regular health check, I would ask for B12, blood work to be done. And it's certainly well worth the money spent, because if your numbers are lower than they should be, then you can take steps. If they aren't, you feel confident to continue the way you're eating.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Craig, again, and thank you, everyone. So we will be meeting for our next session on Sunday. So we look forward to seeing you then. There is a replay of this session available in the classroom group, which was live streamed. So if you have not taken notes and you want to just go over to refresh yourself, you can find that link there. So thank you again for coming. I don't know if Davina has any closing words that she wants to share. Otherwise, we will say good evening to you and wish you all the best until we see you on Sunday.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Craig, for coming once more. And thank you very much, Loy, our host. We do have a session this evening on the Jamaican time. Well, it's 7 to 8 p.m. New York time, or standard Eastern Standard Time. So that's 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As for those who are in Jamaica, it is 6 to 7 p.m. I'm not sure what time that is in Trinidad. But what I can do, I can tell you that now it is 2:15 in Jamaica. So you can check the time for Trinidad. So we do have the same session repeated for the Caribbean and Eastern Standard Time audience this evening. I hope everyone really enjoyed this presentation. I did. I've learned a lot as per usual. And there is even still more questions, but since we're out of time, I will save them. So thank you very much once more, and bye.